Welcome back to Dana and Dave's Garage, and in this video, we'll be working on the Suzuki GS750. The last time you saw this, I got it running pretty much perfectly, and now it's time to get it riding pretty much perfectly. So with that being said, there's a lot of work ahead of us, and might as well stop talking it to work.
Let's go ahead and get the bike on the stands and into its service position where it's going to sit for the next couple of months and give us easy access to start disassembling all the wheel, brake, and suspension components.
Alright, the front wheel is now off the bike. We can do stuff with it. I think this axle should just pop out, but it seems like it's frozen in place. If I do recall on my other GS, it did just kind of pop up, and so I had to undo this from the speedometer cable. I'll see what's going on there later on.
The axle is actually supposed to slide out, but I left it be. We can now start working on removing the forks to rebuild them later, and that means first removing the brake calipers, the line, the fender, and finally loosening the clamping bolts on the triple tree. This is also supposed to just slide out, but as you notice, the corrosion really made this difficult, and this will be a common theme here throughout the build.
Alright, the front end of the GS is all blown apart, and now I'm dedicated to actually getting this back together because it's taking up space in the garage. I'm going to go ahead and take the wheels to a dealership so they can go ahead and put new tires on for me because I don't want to deal with the old rubber. And then I'm going to start by doing the brakes and then the front forks.
Brake master cylinder will need to be rebuilt at a minimum, so it gets yoinked off the bike where we can assess it on the bench later. By the way, these brake lines were original, date coded 1077. The rear gets the same treatment. After trying to first unsuccessfully remove the exhaust, off goes the caliper, the wheel, and master cylinder. We'll be able to take a closer look at each of these components on the table later, as we're not quite done with disassembly yet. And this is what it looks like now that both wheels have been removed. Next is a side cover for the chain and sprocket. Important note is that this is a JIS screwdriver, not Phillips, meant specifically for this style of hardware used on these older Japanese motorcycles. Kind of expensive, but saves a ton of headaches, so definitely worth it. And some light persuasion is all it takes to break these free. The chain and sprocket are standard service items, and it's quite clear that they are due for replacement.
Using the handy master link pliers to get this master link off. Hopefully it comes off easily.
Here's the old chain next to the shiny new one, and we just want to verify that the replacement is the same size, which it is. I went ahead and ordered new sprockets in the original tooth counts, and these are actually made in Japan and just feels right using these as replacements.
Should get a new one of these, but I didn't order one, but whatever. Alright, torque speculation is somewhere around 40 foot-pounds. Let's see. Cool. Alright, I have all of the braking components that I'm going to rebuild laid out in front of me. Here we have the front master cylinder and the front brake caliper, and then the rear brake caliper and the rear master cylinder. I have rebuild kits for all of these, so we're going to try and do our best to salvage these parts, and hopefully we can stop after this. That is not a good sign. Alright, I'm trying to see. There should be a snap ring in there, but there really isn't a whole lot left of that snap ring. Alright, this is going to be pretty much impossible to get out because there's literally nothing to grab in there, and I actually broke my pliers to get this out, to try and get that out. And if it's that bad here, I don't know if it's going to even be salvageable. Alright, next up is the front master cylinder. Let's see if I can actually reuse this and rebuild it. Let's take a look inside of here. some dirty fluid. I'll go ahead and toss that out. And the inside of this is very gross.
This is as far as I went with the front brake master cylinder, as I wasn't able to take it further apart to remove the plunger, and a new replacement was available. So we'll throw this into the trash as well and move on to the brake
gross.
caliper. Starting first with the front caliper, we can start stripping it down just to see how bad it is. Pop out the cylinder using compressed air, and after a quick wipe, we can see the cylinder looks to be in serviceable condition. So we can go ahead and put this to the side. Moving on to the rear caliper, this has 2 bolts holding the 2 halves together, and 1 bolt really didn't want to come out. It also took a good amount of effort to split it apart.
Oh, there we go. Well, of course I forgot to turn the camera back on as I launched this thing across the garage. But we got both of them out, and they do look pretty gross. Well, I'm going to go ahead and clean these up as best as I can, so boom. Alright, after paint, this is what we're working with. I think these turned out pretty good. Now just put them all back together. That brake kit and this one. So with these 2 kits, should have everything you need to do the front, and then this should be for the back.
The pistons for the rear brake calipers were still in serviceable condition, so they're being reused. They just get lubed up and then slide into place. We can go ahead and do that for the other side as well, and then go ahead and install the dust seal, install the O-rings that seal the halves, and then bolt the caliper back together. This process is really similar to the front caliper, so just gets repeated.
New EBC brake pads. So for now, this is done, and I'll put the other bleed screw in when it's time to actually put this on the bike and bleed it. Front caliper time. Alright, and that's how our brake caliper looks like. All put together, new pads, everything in place. Should be ready to go. Alright, here we actually have a new brake master cylinder. I decided to just get a new one because the old one was pretty far gone and I couldn't take it apart, and who knows if the inside of it was actually going to be usable. So a new one was only like 60 bucks and everything's brand new. It also came with a new brake switch, so I can just plug that in, and it should be pretty straightforward to install and then bleed the brakes and everything. So
for the rear master cylinder, I ended up sourcing a used part off of eBay that was in slightly better condition than what I pulled off the bike. These are actually really simple, and everything gets shoved back inside in the order shown, and we can slap this back on the bike and call it done. The new brake switch wire was too short and needed to be extended, and at the same time behind the headlight, I got caught up with the side quest of properly mounting up the ignition switch that was temporarily installed over a year ago from part 1. So with both the ignition and brake switch wired up, this headlight can get tidied up and installed.
So now the perfect time to start taking apart these front forks and making them work a little bit better than what they used to. So here we have them, both of them on my little bench here. This should be the drain plug to drain out the old oil, and then from there we can undo the one screw at the bottom, and then take off the dust cover, split everything apart, undo the nut at the top. Should come apart pretty easy, and then we can get to the seals on the inside and it'll be pretty nice. That looks pretty gross, so it's a good thing we're going to replace it. But I think what I don't have is a new one of these. You can see just how thin the metal is from rusting out. So that's going to be a problem putting it back together. Alright, it is now like 2 weeks later, waiting for these to come in so I can actually put these back together. But at the same time, I decided to just go all out and just ordered these spacers because I figured out that there's a bit too much of a gap between the seal and this where the ring goes. So I got those spacers, and then I also just got actual Suzuki part numbers for the fork seals because I think they're going to be better than whatever was in that kit that I was going to use. So now is a good time to put these all together. Alright, now with the fork seal pressed down all the way, you can see there's very little gap between where that retaining ring goes and then the top of the fork seal. That's the way it's supposed to be. Alright, so I put the front fork here where it belongs, and I have all the dust boots and everything on. I put it on before torquing down everything because it's going to be easier when it's held in the bike to actually torque down this front nut and then also the bottom when that front nut is done. So I'll just have to move the handlebars out of the way, but this should be a little bit easier. Now it's time to fill up the forks with oil, and the factory service manual actually specifies a 50-50 mix of 10W30 oil and ATF. So that's what I'm going to be using for this. And it calls for about 6 ounces of oil in each fork. So I'm going to do 3 and 3. That'll be good enough.
After the oil was poured in, I worked the fork up and down to get all the air out and then tighten everything up. Now we can start making this look like a motorcycle again by installing the other fork and the fender. New tires were mounted and balanced at the local dealer, and these are Dunlop D404 100 90/19s in the front and 120 90/18s in the rear. I like to see how fast I'm going, so the speedo cable gets reconnected as well. Our rebuilt brake caliper now goes in place, and matched with it are a new set of custom brake lines since the old ones were actually original. Now, just to fill up the reservoir and bleed the brakes. And that is the front done. Earlier we replaced the front sprocket, so the rear is up next to match. This one is also the original tooth count. It's a super simple maintenance item, just bend the safety tabs out of the way and blast it off the impact. On installation, it gets torqued down, and along with the safety tabs, bend over again. Now we can slide the wheel in along with installing the chain, axle, caliper, and fill the reservoir to actually bleed the brakes. And I'm going to call the rear mostly done, because we're not done yet.
Alright, the bike is now almost complete. Got the front suspension all figured out and everything kind of in between. I have one more thing left to put on, and that is this new rear shocks. And I think I may have messed up a little bit. They're about an inch longer than these original ones, but I think anything is going to be better than what's already on here, because I'm pretty sure these are just completely blown out and aren't doing me any good. So even though these are a little bit longer, these will be okay. Well, I have spoken too early, and the suspension is literally at full droop. Wheel is touching the ground, and this is not gonna fit. Alright, a couple of days later, and I'm wearing a hat. Also, I have this bad boy, which is a new shock, and I think this is gonna work a lot better. It seems to be more of the correct length, and I think this also looks pretty decent. So I'm gonna put these on, and then I think we'll be just about ready to get this thing going.
Everything is back together, and unfortunately the bike is still ugly. Other than that, everything needed to ride this GS750 safely has been done. Only thing left to do, that's take it out and see if all this effort was worth it. I couldn't be happier with the results. Power delivery is smooth, predictable, and ample. Ride quality is comfortable with no vibrations or weird handling characteristics. The riding position is not fatiguing at all and relatively ergonomic. Suspension and brakes gives you just enough confidence to attack some twisties with a little bit of pace, and has aged relatively well in its capabilities, although it's certainly not as nimble as its modern competition, and we're not pushing it that hard. But after almost 50 years, would you? Over this 3-part series, we've given this 1978 Suzuki GS750 a new lease on life. We rescued this beauty from a shed where it sat forgotten, slowly succumbing to the harsh New England weather. Now, every mechanical component has been meticulously restored to its former glory. The engine purrs like it did when new, and the electrics spark with renewed energy. The suspension glides smoothly, yearning for the open road. We've received a lot of comments to do a full restoration, but instead we've intentionally preserved its weathered exterior, not just because we're lazy. But each dent, each faded patch of paint tells a story. These aren't imperfections. They're chapters in this bike's long and storied history. In our pursuit of perfection, we often forget the beauty of imperfection. This GS750 stands as a testament to the Japanese concept of wabi-sabi, finding beauty in imperfection and accepting the natural cycle of growth and decay. Its current aesthetic isn't just a reminder of its past, it's a celebration of it, wearing every mile ridden, every adventure taken, and every year it persevered as a badge of honor. In rescuing this Suzuki, we haven't just restored a motorcycle, we've preserved a piece of history. It's a reminder to us that true beauty lies not in perfection, but in authenticity, resilience, and the stories we carry with us, even if silent. This GS750 isn't just ready for the road, it's ready to write the next chapter of its story. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to catch the next chapter. Thanks for watching.
It even sounds like my bike.
Yep.
Have a great day.
You too.